everyone, Chris here, and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about the books I read between November 30th and December 6th. First up, I read The OK Witch and the Hungry Shadow by Emma Steinkellner, and I gave this book 4.25 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt favorite color on the cover for Believeathon. This is the second book in the OK Witch series. In this series, we're following Moth Hush, who loves all things witchy. And in the first book, she learns about the dramatic history of the town, which includes her family, and discovers her backstory, that she is a witch. And in that book, she quickly learns that as much as she's wanted magic, magic isn't as easy to have as she thought it was going to be. And in this book, we're seeing her progression as she continues to come to terms with the fact that she has magic and her heritage. This is a middle grade graphic novel, so these books are really quick and easy reads. I really enjoyed getting to see Moth continue to grow as a witch and how the author continued to demonstrate that magic isn't a easy solution to anything. And I liked getting to see Emma struggle with that because yes, she has magic, but it is not a complete fix. Like, she still has things in her life that aren't perfect, and magic can't fix everything. And I really enjoyed the way the author demonstrated that in this book. I enjoyed getting to see Moth grow as a character throughout this novel and the lessons that she learned, both witchy and non-witchy. I think this is a really cute middle grade graphic novel series, and I definitely intend to continue it if there is a book 3. Next up, I read Kidnap on the California Comet by M.G. Leonard and Sam Sedgman, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt features an adventure for Believeathon. So this is the second book in the Adventures on Train series. And in this series, we follow Hal, who goes on adventures on trains with his uncle. In this one, he is traveling on the California Comet when a kidnapping happens. And Hal once again decides to investigate, this time with a couple of kids he met at the start of his journey on the train, and once again must use his drawing and observation skills to piece together the crime. I'm still really enjoying the series. I love the illustrations. So I don't own the second one, as that was a library book, but I do own the first one. So we get like drawings throughout the book. And I think they really add a lot to the story, as I just think they're a cool touch that helps to show off what Hal is seeing and gives us a look at all of the suspects, because in every book at some point he draws everybody who is on the train with him, and I think that is such an interesting addition to the story. I like that Hal, while he can't necessarily tell you what he saw, he can draw what he saw, and as long as you didn't interrupt him, he can draw much better from memory than he could speaking of it, and I think that makes his drawings even more important to the story. I liked getting to see Hal develop this relationship with a couple of people he met on the train and how they went about piecing together this crime. I think this is a really good, fast-paced, middle-grade mystery adventure story, and I definitely plan to continue on with the series because I've heard they continue to be brilliant. Next up, I read 13 Treasures by Michelle Harrison, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt pretty cover for Believeathon. In this book, we're following a young girl named Tanya who can see fairies, but these fairies are not nice fairies. They tend to torment Tanya, and this causes her to have lots of disturbances in the night, and it is really grating on her mom's nerves. So she sends Tanya to spend some time at her grandmother's house. Once there, Tanya finds a picture of a girl who went missing over 50 years ago, and her grandmother refuses to speak of it. So Tanya decides to investigate this disappearance herself, and it soon leads her down a path that may put her in the same predicament as this missing girl. So I really enjoyed getting to see Tanya try to deal with these fairies, because I think a lot of people, especially when you're talking like middle grade, think of nicer fairies, helpful fairies. Like, I think you get a more of a gist of like a Disney fairy, which tend to be helpful and sweet and kind, and these fairies are not that. Tanya isn't supposed to talk about them, so every time she tries to record something about them or say something about them, they retaliate because they're trying to protect their identity. But they do so in such mean ways that it literally torments her. And of course, her mother has no idea this is going on. So you can totally understand where her mother is coming from, because her mother doesn't understand the issues going on with Tanya, and Tanya can't tell her. And even if she did, there's no guarantee her mother would believe her. So it is interesting to see that dynamic play out, and then her get sent to her grandmother's, who she doesn't necessarily have the best relationship with, and her discovering this mystery and becoming really involved in this mystery and wanting to know what is going on with that. I also think this nails pretty cover because it's an absolutely stunning cover, which is what drew me into the book. That, and it's written by Michelle Harrison, who also writes the Pinch of Magic series. This is another great start to a series by her, and I believe, yeah, there's 2 more in this trilogy, 13 Curses and 13 Secrets, and I'm very curious as to what is going to happen with those, because just like with A Pinch of Magic, this kind of feels like it could be a standalone. So if we're still following Tanya, I'm wondering what is going to happen to Tanya next, because again, just like with the sisters in the A Pinch of Magic series, I kind of felt like that story was wrapped up, so I was curious as to where the story was going to go next for them, and I'm feeling the same way with this one, because I feel like a lot of the loose ends were wrapped up in the story, so I'm very curious to see what Tanya is going to get up next, and I will definitely be continuing on with this series. Next up, I read The Hungry Ghosts by Miguel Flores, and I gave this book 3.75 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt middle grade for Phase 10 Chooses My TBR. In this book, we're following Millie, who has magic and is really trying to ignore it because magic is banned in Arnett where she lives. And she is currently living at St. George's Orphanage. One of the other girls at the orphanage, Scylla, would do anything to have magic, even though that would put her in a lot of danger. Then one day, an angry, bitter witch shows up and kidnaps Scylla, thinking that Scylla is the one that has magic and not Millie. Millie then sets off to find Scylla with a wind that is trapped in the form of a cat and may have to use her magic, whether she wants to or not, if she would like to rescue Scylla. So I wasn't sure about this book at first. It was right around a 3-star until the end, and the reason for that is that we have footnotes. And I wasn't sure how I felt about the footnotes. But by the end, I understood why they were there, and that raised my rating. So if you're worried about the footnotes, go into it with an open mind, because by the end they do make sense and you understand why the footnotes were there in the first place. But that took me a little bit to get into with these footnotes because you had to keep referring to the footnotes. But I do think that in the end they make a lot of sense. Back to Millie though, I really enjoyed getting to see her set out on this journey to find Scylla, because she has such a tight bond with Scylla that she's more than just a friend. Scylla's almost like a little sister to her. So she's absolutely heartbroken and devastated that Scylla was mistaken for her. And she's terrified about anybody finding out about her magic. But Scylla is kind of worth using that magic for. So she really struggles with this balance of, I love Scylla so much, but I'm terrified of my magic. But if I don't use my magic, I might not be able to find Scylla. So it is very interesting to see that struggle in her during her journey. I love that Scylla was a lot more carefree about it, that she just wanted magic and she didn't really understand what all the fuss was. I loved some of the characters that Millie met along the way as she was trying to track down Scylla and rescue her. I really did enjoy this book. And like I said, once I understood why the footnotes were there, I enjoyed it a lot more. And I definitely think I would be willing to read more from Miguel Flores in the future, because I really like the way they told their story and the way it kind of came together in the end. So I would definitely be willing to give them another try in the future, especially now knowing what I know about the footnotes, which was really the biggest problem I had with the story as a whole. Next up, I read Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellafleur, and I gave this book 4.25 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt Fake Dating for Mary Bookmiss and Last Letter First for Phase 10 Chooses My TBR. So in this book, we're following 2 points of view. We have Darcy, who has no desire to be in a relationship, but her brother is insistent on setting her up on blind dates because he's a hopeless romantic. And then our other point of view is Elle, who is an astrologer who has started working with Darcy's brother's company. And Darcy's brother ends up setting Elle up on a date with Darcy. And it goes terribly wrong. But Darcy, trying to get her brother off her back because he wants to set her up again and again and again, and she's tired of being set up, tells her brother that it went great, which is surprising when he mentions something to Elle, because she knows it didn't. So she ends up tracking Darcy down and confronting her and being like, what are you talking about? Why did you tell your brother our date went well when it didn't? And Darcy ends up begging her to play along. So they agree to pretend to date until New Year's Eve, which covers some commitments for both of them that will hopefully get Elle's family off of her back a little bit and get Darcy's brother off of hers. Of course, along the way, as they're fake dating, they both start to develop feelings and have to figure out what they're going to do with that when this relationship has an end date. So I ended up really enjoying this book. There were, I believe, 2 sex scenes, and they were a little more graphic than I like, because I prefer like the fade to black kind of sex scenes where like, you know, the characters are having sex, but you don't actually have to read it on page. And I was listening to the audiobook of this, and I am the type of person that once I'm listening to the audiobook of something, even if I have the physical copy, I have to continue on with the audiobook. So that made it even more awkward to listen to. Although I sped it up as fast as I could so I could get through those pages as quickly as possible. And I believe my other negative was that there were Harry Potter mentions in this book. Like, I think this was the one that had their Harry Potter mentions. Obviously, it's been a while since I've read this, but I don't need Harry Potter mentions in my books. So I'm pretty sure that this is one of the ones I've read in the last few months that had them. So hopefully I will be seeing less of that going forward as newer releases don't include that content. But I think those were the 2 main reasons I knocked this down a bit, because you are never going to get a 5-star book out of me if you have a bunch of Harry Potter references, or if you have explicit sex scenes that don't just fade to black and are closed door, because that's not my thing. But again, that's a me thing, not a problem with the book. So if those things don't bother you, then completely disregard that. I really enjoyed the contrast between Darcy and Elle, because they're very, very different people, and it is interesting watching them try to navigate this fake relationship without offending the other one. And I love watching them grow to care for one another and having to figure out how to balance that with the fact that it was also a fake relationship. In the end, I really did enjoy how their relationship grew and changed throughout the book, and how it kind of came together in the end. And this is the first in a series, and I believe there's at least 2 other books, and in one of them I believe we're following Darcy's brother, and in the other I believe we're following Elle's best friend. And I definitely plan to continue on with the series, because I like the way Alexandra Bellafleur writes her characters and writes the romance, even if there are some steamy scenes. And I got really attached to the characters, and I want to know what's going to happen next for them. So I'm hoping we will hear more about Darcy and Elle in those books. And I got attached to the brother and the best friend, so I want to hear their stories too. All in all, this was a romance I really enjoyed, and if it sounds interesting to you, I would recommend it, especially if the idea of steamy sex scenes in Harry Potter don't bother you. Then you should definitely give this book a try, because it was a really good romance. And lastly, I read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan and adapted by Robert Venditti, and I gave this book 3 stars. This book fulfilled the prompt chosen one for Mary Bookmas. So this is a graphic novel adaptation of Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson. And in that book, we're following Percy, who ends up getting chased by monsters and ends up at Camp Half-Blood, where he finds out that his father is one of the gods, and he is a demigod, meaning he is the child of a human and a god. Now, I love Percy Jackson, but I did not love the adaptation. So I'm not a huge fan of the art style. Like, it just isn't for me. And knowing the full story, this felt rushed. There were things in here that I wasn't sure happened in this book. There were things in here that I could have sworn happened that weren't shown in this book. I think there were even things in here that I felt happened in a different order, though that probably doesn't make sense. So I don't know if I just am misremembering The Lightning Thief because it's been a while since I've read it, and I'm mixing up things that happen in certain books, or if I'm just really not enjoying the fact that I know The Lightning Thief and enjoyed The Lightning Thief and wanted this graphic novel to include all of the things I enjoyed about The Lightning Thief. So I think, again, this might be a me problem. I understand that with a graphic novel, you have to kind of condense things, because there's no way that they could add every scene from the full novel in this graphic novel and have it be this tiny. It's not possible. But there were definitely at least one major thing that happened in Percy's journey during The Lightning Thief that I know didn't happen in the graphic novel, and that bugged me. And then I feel like the ending was changed, though again, I might just be misremembering the way things happen in The Lightning Thief. I just feel like this is maybe not the right series for me when it comes to graphic novels. And again, maybe if I hadn't read the actual books, it wouldn't be so bad, but I have, and I think that I'm always going to be wanting more out of the graphic novels, and I'm not going to be able to get it because, again, they're restricted by the amount of pages they have. So all in all, it was an all right read, but I don't know that the graphic novel series is for me. So these are some of the books I read between November 13th and December 6th. All of my social media, including my Discord, is linked in the description below if you'd like to come chat with me. If you've made it this far in the video, leave me chicken emojis, like this video, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye!